What is up? Welcome to the first podcast. I'm Caleb Ezekiel. This is Megan, and this is a new podcast that we just started called New Creation. The reason why we started this is because we both have different life experiences that we wanted to share our testimonies with you guys, and just the things that we've been seeing in the world, how the world's getting crazy and things have been changing. We want to give our input on that. So we hope to be making a lot more episodes. And yeah, so this is kind of just an introduction. So I'll go ahead and start off. Again, my name's Caleb. I was born and raised in California. My family was like a Christian family, and so I grew up going to different churches and things like that. But through culture and through things that I got into in my life, I started smoking weed at a young age and stuff like that. Parents got divorced when I was younger. It started pushing me towards the world and away from God. I thought God was just kind of like made up, like a made up fairy tale basically. And so I actually started getting into trouble. I started, stealing things and stuff like that. And I was just basically a troublemaker. I was always getting in trouble in school. And then through the years, I had some weird experiences. Like my stepbrother and I, when I was in seventh grade, we ended up wanting money, and so he was like, "Oh, I got a book from the library that says, this is how you do a magic spell to get money." And I was like, whatever, let's just do it. Let's see how, see if it works, see how it goes. So we ended up going to the park by my aunt's house, and we lit candles, and we said these words, and we did a magic spell to get money. And then a couple weeks later, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks or so later, there was a house across the street that my friends and I at the time broke into. I was in eighth grade at this point. And we were like running around the house going wild, just like smoking and being stupid kids and stuff like that. And the back door was locked. So I went in through the back door, this like slider that was unlocked. The whole house was like empty except for a back door that was locked in the back, like a master bedroom. So we kind of hung out there for, I don't remember how long, but a couple days to a week. And then I was like, let's get in that back room. So I took, in the backyard, there was a bunch of stuff, like a sledgehammer. There was like bee drawers, with like honey and bees and stuff, which was pretty weird. But I grabbed a sledgehammer, went into the back room, boom, hit the door open. And in there was like, I could still see it in my head. There was like a bed, a dresser, some boxes, and the room was like full of stuff. So me and my friend, we started going through stuff, and I remember him finding like a cool pocket knife in the dressers, and I was jealous. And I was like, oh man, I want to find something cool. So I opened up these boxes, whoop, and there was 320s per page of counterfeit money. And I was like, oh, look at this. So I grabbed a big old stack of it. We ended up cutting it out with a paper cutter. My friend took one from school. And my stepbrother, I just remember we were cutting it out in the garage, and my stepbrother walked into the garage one day, and I was like, don't tell your mom and my dad. And like threw some money at him, and he was like, oh, snap. And so anyways, I don't know if we're supposed to be like talking to each other or talking to the camera. Anyways,
no idea. I don't know where to look. But I'm like,
again, this is our first podcast, so bear with us. But anyways, yeah. So I ended up, long story short, I ended up getting a bunch of money, and I was spending it around school and around town and stuff like that. And I was like being dumb. And then we ended up getting in trouble. I ended up getting arrested, and it was a federal issue and all this stuff. So they had to come to the school, and I ended up doing family counseling, got it off my record, thank goodness.
You should probably start with your parents' divorce. Like how your parents were whenever you were a kid.
I'll go back to that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But anyways, so that was my experience with doing like magic, and so it ended up working. Yeah, the money was counterfeit. I ended up getting arrested, in trouble, but I ended up finding a bunch of money and spending it all around town. So I was like, what the heck? So that was like my first experience with that. Rewinding to what she was saying. My name obviously being Caleb, and then my middle name Ezekiel. My dad wanted to name me Ezekiel. My mom wanted to name me Caleb. My mom won that argument, so my first name was Caleb.
Everything.
Right? So that was my first name was Caleb, then Ezekiel. So I was brought up in a Christian home. My grandparents were Christian, all my aunts and uncles and everybody. And I was kind of like the black sheep of the family at that point. I was like the oldest boy cousin. My sister was the oldest cousin, and then me. And so, yeah, my dad and my mom ended up actually losing a baby before myself and my sister was born, named after my dad, Jeff. And when my dad was in school, he was like playing in rock bands and stuff. Music runs in my family. If you couldn't tell, got the music note, my tattoo from my grandpa, one of those old school microphones. So music runs in my family. And so, my dad and my mom, he became, like, as she would put it, overly Christian and overboard Christian. And this is in like the 90s, right? So this was before the internet and, TikTok and YouTube, all that stuff. So she actually ended up taking me and leaving back to California. We were in Colorado at the time, and she had left my sister with my dad. And so, it basically created this. Basically, I don't know how else to put it, but demons. It created these demons within me and my sister of spirit of anger and all this stuff, and that I carried with me for a really long time. And then my dad ended up moving back to California, and my family was split at that point. And I went from being in a Christian house because my mom left. She said my dad was being overly Christian, which, I think some of it had to do with them having their first child pass. And my mom didn't come from a Christian family. She came from a family that was living, in the world, doing all kinds of stuff, doing drugs and stuff like that. So for her, it was too much. My dad said no Disney. We couldn't watch Disney movies because they were evil, which at the time I was like, I can't watch Disney movies. What the heck? Like, I was like bothered by it because I was like, that's weird. That's too overboard. And now looking at everything going on with Disney, I'm like, you were right the whole time, which is another conversation.
And then Halloween.
No Halloween. We did Harvest. We'd go to church and do Harvest and stuff like that. And so, I felt like I was being deprived of, the fun stuff. And my mom was like, I wanted you to be able to celebrate Halloween and things like that. So I ended up moving from a Christian family. We ended up moving in with my grandma in California. And then I was like straight up the opposite. I was getting into trouble. I was around friends. There was a complete absence of God, of Christianity, stuff like that. When my dad moved back and I started spending more time with him, my grandparents, my papa and grandma, who I have tattooed on me, I just showed you the microphone of my grandpa. And then my grandma, I have praying hands with love on it. I ended up living with them for a while with my dad and my sister. My mom, when I was in 5th grade, she was struggling because, after getting a divorce, her and my dad were high school sweethearts. So, life was really hard for a single mother. And so, she ended up needing to rent out my room so that she could pay the bills and stuff. And so that created some, demons between me and her and anger between myself and her. And so then I moved in with my dad, my grandparents, and then I was just kind of getting in trouble. My dad was working all the time. I was getting in trouble at school. I told you that counterfeit money story, which ended up happening in middle school. He met my stepmom, and she was like straight up like evil towards me. She was an ex-druggie, but loved my dad because he was like Jesus. And my dad was very, he was very Christian, and looking back, he was right about everything, but we treated him horribly. My sister and I would be like, yeah, whatever, Christian. Like, we'd call him Christian as a nickname and stuff like that. And, I feel really bad for everything that we did to him, if you can't tell. But, fast forward a number of years, and we ended up moving to Southern California. And then I just couldn't be around my stepmom. She was always putting me down, always like being verbally abusive to me and stuff like that. So I ended up moving out from Southern California to Northern California. I moved in with the drummer of my band. We started a metal band called Insurrection, and we were playing all over. In high school, we were playing all over the Bay Area. And then that just got me more into drugs and partying and rock and roll and sex and just stuff like that, just things of the world. And then my dad ended up moving back. I ended up moving back in with him. Ended up having a... I'll rewind. It's weird doing this when you haven't done this before, so it's hard to get your thoughts together. This could be our practice,
and then we could take parts of it.
That's all right. I like it. We're just gonna roll with it. You guys are here for the first video. She's nervous, so cut her some slack. But anyways, I ended up just getting in trouble partying, and then my dad ended up moving away. He ended up moving to Tennessee, and then I just moved in with friends at that point, and I was just partying, getting ratchet, being dumb, playing metal music, and only caring about the world. And then I ended up getting a girl pregnant, and then I had my son, who is now, he just turned 15 a few days ago. He's my best friend in the world, and I'm so thankful that I have him. And God really used him to mellow me out, because I was just basically wilding out, just going crazy all the time, which I think a lot of you can probably relate to. But anyways, had him, and then just started going down a very depressing route in my life, where I had so much anger from the different things that I had gone through, that I was taking it out on everybody I knew. I didn't know how to handle my emotions. Ended up going to jail for getting drunk and fighting in Pleasanton. And then that was just a short amount of time. It was like one day. It was like 23 hours. But I was in jail and I was like, this sucks. I don't want to do this anymore. So then I kind of like, I moved in with my aunt and uncle and I kind of like reformed my life, like was going to church and stuff. And I had it a few times where I'd like gone to church and she gave me a Bible with my name on it and stuff. But I never really read it. I had my ears at like an inch gauge. That's why I have these beautiful little holes right here. And I had my septum gauged and everything. Yeah. We went through that whole hardcore scene and all that stuff. But I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. So I started running the sound at the church because, my guitar player for my band was my best friend at the time. And he got a scholarship to Pepperdine in Southern California. So my band had to break up. And that was like my whole plan was like, oh, I'm just going to play music. Well, when that fell through, I was just working whatever jobs, dating whatever girls, and just getting into issues in the world. And then I ended up just partying for a really long time, come to think of it, until I met you. We met on Snapchat.
You're still partying together.
Yeah, we were partying together. We met in the world. So I guess fast forward. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff that happened in the middle, but, when I'm on the spot, it's hard to think of right now.
No.
But, then we met each other just off Snapchat, hung out, and hit it off, and everything just, it went perfectly. And then we met in 2020. So we met summer 2020, fell in love, pandemic. I had a song because I was making secular music in the world. And we met and we started hanging out. And then everything started getting really weird with the masks mandates and like the vaccine stuff and all that stuff. And we were like, something isn't right. We were doing OnlyFans and stuff like that. And then we ended up, because of the vaccines, her son, Logan, she was like, he has some health stuff going on, so he can't get vaccinated. And so we were like, we need to get out of here. Like, California is going downhill. She'll tell you more about her story in a minute, but, we ended up getting some money and being able to move. So we moved out of California to Tennessee, which is funny because that's where my dad ended up moving a while back. He has since just moved back also, which is cool. Him and my sister just moved here, which is really nice. But we're right outside of Nashville. But we came out here, and I think I came across. We were just like piecing stuff together, right? Like little things
Ever
here and there.
Ever since 2020, and you showed me like the politics and what was going on. I just started paying attention to stuff, and you started really paying attention to stuff, and I would dig deep, and then you would know we just connected.
Totally.
Everything.
Well, I'll tell you what. Let me pause my story right there, then, and then let me let you tell your story up until that point.
Oh. Well then, I guess I can start that my parents they were always together. They had started dating when they were 12, and they partied and did a lot of bad things, bad decisions, and they had me, their oldest, when they were 24, and my parents were not married, but only together, and so then they had me. Whenever I was about 4, I had just my sister. She would have been 2, and I started getting really sick. And first it was just ear surgeries. I would get ear infections, and then it was my breathing was really bad. I don't know when my breathing really started, but I started getting hospitalized for that at 4 with my ears because they would explain that everything was connected and they just didn't know what was going on, and they would try to operate on all these different things. And so I was hospitalized until the age of 12 for majority of the year every year. And whenever I was about 13, I refused all medication, and I never needed any medication after that. Well, my mom and I had a rocky experience together in the hospital. My dad didn't like death. He didn't like doctors. He didn't like hospitals. So he was never there. My mom was always there. And my mom did this victim card. So if I was sick or she had to stay in the hospital with me for a week, she would complain that she didn't get to see her other child. She didn't get to take showers. She didn't get to do anything. It was always about her. So we had this tension between us where she just would put me down all the time, and then she was really mean to me, and I just didn't understand it. But then come to find out years later that she started taking prescription pills at that time, that she changed into this different person basically. But And whenever I was 13, we had this really big fight, and she wanted me to physically hurt her. She told me that I needed to, and I just looked at her, and I remember being a child and thinking this isn't how you should be living. So I asked my dad if I could move in with my grandmother, and so the summer of my 14th birthday, I moved in with my grandmother, or summer of my 15th birthday, it was like the next year after that. It's like I was 14 whenever we had a fight. I don't know, I did freshman high school with her, but anyway. And then I moved in with my grandmother. I was with my grandmother for probably a year, and I ended up getting pregnant with my daughter at 16, and I had her when I was 17, and I raised her, went to cosmetology school. Over those years, I had struggled with anxiety so bad that I couldn't do normal things that people could do. I couldn't go into a grocery store and buy my own groceries. I'd have to take my friend Megan with me, and she'd buy everything for me, and we'd do everything together because I always needed someone there to help me because I couldn't do anything by myself. I didn't cross the road until I was 16, and my grandmother, she was like, Megan, you need to learn to do this. And so my grandma really pushed me and helped me with everything, and then having my daughter really pushed me out of my comfort zone, and so I was able to do a lot of different things that I couldn't before, but I had a debilitating anxiety of everything. I had a fear of everything. And then it got to the point where my grandmother and I started having a rocky relationship because she wanted to claim my daughter more than a grandma. She wanted to be her mom, and so I ended up moving out of there, moving in with my aunt, got in a very abusive relationship at the age of 18 after so many countless failed relationships with guys that I knew wasn't going to work out, but you still do it anyway. And I started thinking about all that. Anyway, I got in an abusive relationship, and that my daughter got hurt in, and that was a whole part of my life that really changed how my family and I treated each other, because my sister got in the middle of it, my cousins got in the middle of it, my aunts got in the middle of it, and basically they all took the guy's side. My sister even tried to date the guy, and she was way underage, and nobody saw the wrong in that. And so I just had a huge problem with my family for years. Well, then I met my son's dad at the age of 22, 23. And then I had my son, and from there I ended up breaking up with him, moving in with my dad, and then I think my son was 3, and not even 3, he was 2.5, and my dad ended up passing away from a heart rupture. So he pushed through his heart attack, and his heart ended up rupturing, and I found him, and so that kind of just scars you a bit, and I ended up going into a really dark depression and tried to take my life a few months later. And right after having a plastic surgery done that I just thought that I needed it to fix my life. That would solve all my problems. And so I got that surgery, and not even 2 weeks after that surgery, I tried to take my own life. And so from there, I was just struggling with depression, struggling with those intrusive thoughts that just want you to do bizarre things to end your life. And then that next year in 2020, he passed in 2019, March of 2019, and then we met August of 2020, and that's just when my life got better, and we ended up selling the house and moving here. But that's my story in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Up until then, and then we got together and moved out here and started waking up to everything.
Exactly. Yeah. And then, yeah, so
My hands are all cold.
I know, it's hard to talk about that stuff, I know. And so as we were here, then, that's kind of the awakening we went through. It was one day I went to the gym, and this video popped up, and it was this guy, Altion Childs. He won the X Factor in 2010 in Australia. And he had a video which basically talks about Freemasonry and talks about celebrities and shows all the hand signs, all the celebrity hand signs that they all do. They're doing this and covering one eye and all the symbolism.
He took pictures of their Bible, and so it called out what they were doing, and he put proof up, and he said, he could lose his life for doing this, and it shows what it makes them do if they talk about it, and it's just, we really started putting together the pieces and going, that's real. So now we got to look at the fake stuff. We got to look at the stuff that people create, the media that people create to put in front of your face to keep you asleep to all that.
Yep. Basically showing that the world is a stage, and all of our favorite celebrities and favorite music artists and stuff like that are all just basically puppets of a group of people that are running the world. and everything is just a movie, you know. So then and then I came home and I was like, you have to watch this. I was watching it for like 2 hours, and then I showed it to her. I'll link it in the description of this video. It's like a 4-hour video, but it changed the way we looked at things.
It took us like 2 days to watch it.
Yeah, because my sister used to talk about that. She'd be like, look at Beyonce. Why is she covering one eye, and why is Lady Gaga covering one eye?
About the 666 and the blood in the shoe.
And Lil Nas X with the 666.
Oh, so my whole background is that I didn't grow up with a Christian household. My parents, I've never been to church with them if it wasn't a wedding. And I would just go to church with friends, and then I knew what God was, and I thought the way I did about religion was if it helps you get through whatever you're going through or it betters your life, then good for you. But me, I'm just going to be the best person that I could be and not go by a book that I also said was man-made and that I didn't. How could I trust it? How was I going to know? I'll make my own decisions, and I just didn't believe in any religion. I called myself agnostic because I just didn't believe in any of that stuff. I wasn't an atheist. I wasn't someone who wanted to do anything bad or have like no values or laws, but I also didn't know that I was following a life with no values and no morals, and that's what I was getting myself into, and I was opening myself to all these opening all these doors to all these different sinful demons. I mean, opening myself to all these demons, and then I wondered why I struggled with depression, anxiety, and I tried blaming it on, you know, the relationship with my mom and the trauma of like everything I had to go through, and I'd always try and dig into it, and I was very self-aware of like how I felt and that I didn't want to feel this way, and that I would try to tell myself like stop sweating, stop like trying to cry, like my body would just take over, and my head would try to tell it to stop, but I couldn't. And I didn't understand what it was. And then it's now so easy to see that these traumas created demons in my life, but I didn't know that I should be calling them demons. I just thought they were negative energy or some trauma that I have to heal somehow. I didn't realize any of that. And so now seeing it, it's been so easy to now give that thing like, it's not me. It's not inside my head. I don't need the medication that some doctor tries to prescribe me, and some therapy that this therapist dealing with their own demons, and I can see it written all over their face. They're trying to help me, and so I'm sitting there judging them, like thinking, how are you helping me whenever you obviously have problems too? And it's like
right.
Then I don't know, I get that from my dad. It's like, don't try to help me when you have your own issues. Well, now I realize what that is, and that's the only way I know is because of the Bible and what it says, and yeah, that's just where I'm.
So that video really started opening our eyes to the people that are really in control of our society, and then we always have had great conversations, because then we started going, well, wait a minute, what about our education? The people that are behind a lot of these entertainment companies, you know, like the people that are making movies, Warner Brothers, for instance. Warner Brothers makes all these big blockbuster movies, and they're pushing out, you know, the cool characters that we wanted to be like growing up. Or they push out, you know, this person's a nerd, this person's a jock, this person's a music person or whatever, right? Like they were creating these labels that we were all fitting in when we were in school looking around, and you'd see now it's different. Now I don't know how it is now exactly, but, you know, it's the nerd table and the goth table and the this and the that. Well, we wouldn't even have any of those categories if it wasn't for TV and movies. So then we started looking back at like old TV stuff, and we're like, hey, wait a minute, why are they doing this too? Why are they doing these same symbols that now they're still doing? And so that tied everything into society, into that video.
Or the things that they're doing now, like say that, you know, the whole, we're watching Malcolm in the Middle and the kid has a purse, and this was created in the year 2000. Like, it's always been pushed and put in front of your face, and they tell you what they're doing, and just how we see that it's written, and it's obviously a struggle with demons and good and bad, and I mean, the children are obviously taken over by demons, the whole family, and how they spread onto other people and what they do, and just the agendas going on. You can see it 20 years ago plus. Like, we can go farther back and find that. So they've always put it in front of our faces, and they laugh about it, and you get people who say it's just a show, it's just a movie, and it's like, what is it going to take for your eyes to open to that's not just what it is? Like, of course it's a show, it's a movie, but why do you think that that's fake all of a sudden? Why do you think that that's not real? So.
Exactly, yep. And so, you know, then we look at our TV and our entertainment and our music, and then we look at, you know, how come when you trace it all back, how come the people that are behind all of our foods and putting these things in our foods that are giving us these cancers and things like that are also in one form or another making money on selling the cure or selling the medicine for it. So it's like we're just yeah. Then we're like we're still slaves, And so we started looking into all that stuff. And if you're watching this video, I'm guessing you have too. And we got an awesome Discord group called the New Creation server. There's a New Creation podcast because, as the Bible says, in Christ Jesus we are made new creations. But our eyes being unlocked to all that stuff put me down the path where I was in prayer a lot, and I felt that God told me that I needed to read the entire Bible in 3 months. And I didn't know why, and it was just like full volume in my head. And so I was like, okay, God, I'm gonna listen to you. And having obviously my name and my background in Christianity, at least somewhat knowing, I'd hear my dad talking about God talking to him, and my dad used to take me to deliverance churches and stuff, but I would always leave because they'd be like, God has a big calling on your life, and I'd be like, yeah, whatever, weirdo, and I'd go smoke weed outside or whatever, and I would feel uncomfortable. I'd see the demons coming out, my demons wouldn't let me be in there. So I read the whole Bible from October to January of this past year, 2022 to 2023. I think it was October. In October, we were looking for a church out here once we started having our eyes open. And we ended up going to this church, and it was like, oh, you need to follow everything the government says, and you need to, because in Romans it says give to, blah, blah, blah. You need to follow, you need to do what the government says and all this stuff. And I was like, well, if that was true, then Jesus would have never gone against the Pharisees, and we wouldn't even have Jesus or a Bible. So this church doesn't vibe with me. Like, I feel like we need to stand up for the Bible over all else. And if the government's telling me to do something that the Bible's telling me not to do,
nice
I need to follow that. It looked really nice, and the kids area was cool and everything.
They had a whole playground.
So yeah, and I had a job at the time which afforded me the ability to have AirPods in all day. So I'd listen to the audio Bible on there. I'd listen to podcasts, Isaiah Saldivar podcast and stuff like that, which I found out that my grandparents were going to his church back in California, which is funny. But he was coming out here for a conference, and this was like last October, like I had said. And so, or 2 years ago, something like that. Yeah,
November or something.
Yeah, 2 years ago almost, 2022. So I was like, oh, wow, they're having a conference at this place. Let's go check it out. It just happens to be 7 minutes away from our house. We sold everything in California. We didn't know where we were going to move in Tennessee. We just knew it wanted to be somewhat close to Nashville because of music.
Our original plan was Vegas, and we didn't know, but I guess his whole family was praying that we didn't go to Vegas.
Our plans fell through for Vegas. We decided on Vegas, like hook, line, and sinker, and then the money got held up, and then we were just like, what is going on? And then through a chain of events, we were like, wow, Vegas is not the place for us. So we ended up coming here. It's totally God.
I don't even know what made us think that.
I know. It was like,
maybe because with the vaccine and the mandates and stuff and how they still had masks, we were like, no, we
it might have been, yeah. And really dry air makes my nose bleed and stuff. And my aunt and uncle live out here, so I was like, I don't want to be in there. And it's beautiful out here and everything else, right? So we end up driving by it, and it's this big old tent, and it's called Global Vision Bible Church. And we were like, okay, yeah, cool. The conference is going to be there. So we went to the conference. It was a bunch of people. It was like Isaiah Saldivar, Mike Signorelli, Vlad, Greg Locke, Pagani, Alexander Pagani, Daniel Adams, and it was just like awesome. Like it was like nothing we'd ever been to before. We also ended up going on New Year's. We were at a New Year's one that ended up being the movie Come Out in Jesus' Name, and they were like casting demons out of people and all this stuff. And it made us really realize that there's more to Christianity than what I've been shown my whole life. Growing up in church, it was just these watered down Bible college messages of, Jonah and the whale, and Jesus healing the blind man, and Jesus raising Lazarus, and Moses parting the Red Sea, and stuff like that, when there's so much more to the Bible. Like, if I could convey one message, and if you think of New Creation, if you think of Caleb and Megan, the one thing that you need to do is read the Bible for yourself, because that is the most important thing that you could do with your life. Because what the Bible does, and what I've noticed media does, is it explains things. Like, for example, demons. We've mentioned it a few times. If you watch The Exorcist, or if you watch a movie and stuff, all these, especially the newer movies, the horror movies, they're like, it's a demon, and it's this like horn thing that's like, and it like looks like this crazy monster. But that's not what it is. A demon is a spirit that is inside of you that causes you to feel certain things. If you have this unrelenting anger towards your mother, then that's a demon. If you have constant depression telling you to cut your wrists, like she had, that's a demon.
Or eat rat poison.
Or drive your car off the road. Or telling you to whip the steering wheel to the side. And demons enter through trauma. So demons are spirits that you can't see that are inside of your body that enter in through legal rights. So through something that you've come in agreement with, you allow them to be present in your body. Now, you can be non-Christian and you could be completely ran by these things, or you could be Christian and you could still give them place within your body. The Bible says don't give place to demons. Even the Apostle Paul says that he has a thorn in his side and he has a demon in him of infirmity, which is sickness. So through me reading the entire Bible and seeing what a third of Jesus' ministry was casting demons out of people. And I'm like, what the heck? I went to church all these times, and these like mega churches and big churches, they were never talking about this stuff. And so, fast forward to now, that's kind of what caused us to start this podcast. We both have TikToks, and we've been posting on TikTok over the last year, just saying like, what's going on? Number one, what's going on with all this stuff, trying to tell my kids that they need to change from boys to girls and do all this weird stuff. And then that parents shouldn't have any involvement in what's going on with the kids. And the things that they're putting on TV and movies. And it's like, once you're awake to this stuff, you can't go back to sleep. It's impossible to go back to sleep.
Or learning that Cinderella is based off of an old Egyptian story about an orphan girl who was taken away from her parents and had like just the nice clothes that she had, and she'd go up to the roof every night and hold this ruby slipper up to the moon and watch it sparkle in the moonlight. And one night an eagle just happened to steal her shoe and drop it in the courtyard of the pharaoh, and he had the visor go look for this rich wealthy woman who lost the shoe because they believed that the eagle was the eye of was Horus, which is where we get the eye of Horus. And then that goes back to the story I don't like, but anyway. And then he sends his visor out, and the visor goes and finds everyone knows that it's this girl's shoe, and so they point him in that direction, and they couldn't believe that she was a orphan or poor. And he goes back, tells the pharaoh, and he goes, well, it must have been a sign for a reason. I shall marry her at once. Go get her. And the visor went and got her and then brought her back. And I only know that because then you're in the Vanderbilt hospital, take a weird picture of a weird looking thing with one red shoe. And so I Google one red shoe, and I find out that it's like the story of Cinderella and the Wizard of Oz kind of put into one with the ruby red slippers. So it's just, you look into everything and it makes its way all around back to like some source, which is ancient Egypt and Rome.
Yeah, a lot of it leads back to ancient
Greek.
Egypt and Greece and paganism and stuff like that. And that's a lot of what our society's built on. Even especially reading the Bible, it's like we'll watch movies or shows and like 90% of things that are on there is biblical. It's all stuff that's straight out of the Bible. And then we started being like, why are they always talking bad on Jesus' name? Like, why is Jesus the one that these rappers are mocking?
Or blurred out on your TV on MTV. We were watching Catfish and a picture of Jesus was blurred out in the background. Like, yeah. Or they bleeped Jesus one time whenever there was an MTV thing and they bleeped the name. It's like, well, that should be a sign of something. But... And
even Kanye was saying that there's record labels that say you can't even say the name of Jesus.
Yeah.
And then what I've learned through reading the Bible is more an accurate history than the history they teach us in school. And so then we start getting into the public school system and the people that are behind the public school system. And that's the same people that are behind our food and that are behind everything. It's like nothing's ever changed. We're still slaves, just like we've always been. Like, let me ask you this. Do you like your job? 90% of people are going to say, no, I don't really like my job, but I do it because I have to. We're forced into this society where we are told how much our time is worth. And we're told that we need to go work. I need to go work all day. She needs to go work all day. So then our kids can be in public school and after school care. And then they can tell our kids. And you don't pay
attention to your food. And then, you don't pay attention to what you bring into your house. You don't pay attention to what your child's doing. You don't pay attention that you're being so worked to death that your brain doesn't function anymore. And then everything you're being fed even goes into brain function. And it's just, they're trying to.
In the name of normalcy. Those are the people that control our programming, that are literally programming our lives. Why do you think it's called television programming? Now, what do we have? We have this in our hands all day long.
And most of it has an apple on the back, an apple with a bite taken out of it. Whose guy who created it, his daughter's name is Eve.
So just like straight biblical. Yep. Good point, babe. And that's the thing, too, is like the fact of the matter is we're letting our kids be raised by people that don't want you to know anything about Jesus.
People and media. I mean, I think that most people's kids have YouTube. Most people's kids have a tablet. Most people's kids have a phone now. Like, I was shocked with that, and I saw Addie's friend whenever she was telling me that the mom was telling me that she's having so much trouble with her daughter, and she wears these clothes, and she doesn't like it, and she's only 11 years old. I think she may be only 10, maybe she just turned 11, but she's still young, and she has a phone, and her mom doesn't know how to control her. And the way she was talking back to her, I replied with, "You should be a little lawyer," because the comebacks that she had, it was just so defiant. And of course, we all have that. And then that's whenever I started explaining to the mom that, isn't it funny that whenever we have a daughter, we're told that our daughter is going to be 10 times worse than we were. Well, that's just because you're taking all of your demons and passing it on to your child. And in this day and age, they're so advanced, and they have more technology, and they have all these more portals or doors to open. They are going to be a lot worse. Of course they are. It's common sense, but that's something we don't think about or think into.
Yeah, and God, the first commandment is, "You shall have no other gods before me." But what do we do when we're crying because Cardi B is performing in front of us and Rihanna's singing in front of us, or we're going to a Travis Scott concert and we're worshiping these people as idols? And what are we doing? We're making them a god in front of God. And obviously God's wrath is going to come. Like, you see these people in Brazil doing a satanic parade where they're mocking Jesus and all this stuff, and then a big flood happens. Lightning hits the Jesus statue. Like, there's just all these things that you can see going on that is pointing to God's wrath. You look at the Grand Canyon, and some people say, "Oh, it's just one of the great mysteries," and other people say, "No, it's from the biblical flood. There actually was a flood that happened." Like, when you look, we watch an archaeology channel. When you look into things, you find out that it really is. It's all in the Bible, and the Bible is so dope because it's 40 different authors over thousands of years, and there's history books, and then there's prophetic books of things that were to come in the future and still are to come. And then there's Psalms, which is like music, and then there's Proverbs, which is wise sayings. And it's like, people aren't perfect in the Bible. The Bible's not this like beautiful, incredible storybook fairy tale. It's like, no, it's like
It's a history
humans are humans, and humans are influenced by dark entities, and humans are influenced by God, and we're right in the middle of a spiritual warfare, because we battle not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities that are trying to lead us into darkness. And so then you go up through the prophetic books, and you get to Jesus showing up. So a lot of the Old Testament is prophesying a Savior is going to come, and he's going to meet this criteria. Because people like my middle name, Ezekiel, Daniel, there's a couple different prophets in the Bible that angels showed up to, and they fall on their face, and it says as if they were dead because they're like so scared of it. And it's a modern day description of an alien, right? Which all of a sudden the government's telling us, "Oh, yep, aliens are real." And
after denying it for how long?
Right? And people, you're a conspiracy
TV,
theorist if you think
what
there's aliens.
What I realized is that they knew all along. Okay, so we got that part out. They knew. They were lying to you that they weren't, that they were fake. But they put it in your TV. The same people funding the basis of everything in science and your media, they're the people who put it right in front of you to build it up to be this certain thing. And now then we look at the CIA and how they have Project Bluebeam, and then you relate that to the Bible, and you look in the Bible and you go, "Oh, okay, so that's the rapture that they're trying to possibly cover up because they're going to keep people asleep. It's all entertainment. It's a stage. It's
Exactly.
a movie. You may not feel like you're in a movie, but it's being set all around you every single day. Every law that's passed, every movie that comes out, every show that comes out, every song that comes out, it's being set."
Yep. And when you get through the gospel of Christ, then the book of Acts, when Jesus left, he sent the power of the Holy Spirit to the apostles, and he said, "You'll do greater works than I've done in my name." And people are casting out demons from other people. And people at the time were saying, "What new doctrine is this?" When Jesus was doing it, he has authority over demons, which is why the name of Jesus is so important, because Jesus established authority over demons, and through his blood sacrifice of him dying, we have power in his name. So in the book of Acts, Peter and all the disciples were able to go out and do healings as well. Well, then you go to the letters of Paul. Paul was killing Christians at the time. Then Jesus showed up, blinded him after Jesus was already dead, blinded him, and then he said, "Why are you persecuting me?" And then Paul was like, "What? Who are you? Oh, you're Jesus?" Completely changed his life around, started the new church. A bunch of books of the Bible after the gospel is letters that Paul's writing to starting new churches. Then it gets to Jude. Then the last book, Revelation. Revelation's always been one of my favorite books. When I would get in trouble when I was little, my dad would tell me to go read Revelation. But Revelation is the full circle of the Bible, right? So in Genesis, Adam and Eve ate from the fruit. God created the world, put Adam and Eve in the garden. He said, "You can eat from every tree, eat from the tree of life especially, but do not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil." Adam and Eve ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil because the serpent said, "Come on, God didn't really say that." He made them question God, and they put themselves before him by eating it. Because he said, God knows if you eat from that tree, then you'll be like him. And so they said, okay. So they ate from it.
And think about a child. If you put a piece of candy in front of a child and say, don't eat it, and you leave, I mean, what's the probability that that child's going to eat the candy? It's a very high probability, so it's just human nature.
Yeah, and some people will say, well, why would God even put that there? Why would God even put the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? Well, there's something that God created in us called free will. God didn't want us to be little robots, like I always say, to be like, I love God, like walking around and being these little robots. We live in a sorting realm. Like Jesus said, God is going to separate the wheat from the chaff. So what he's looking for is by giving us free will. In the book of Job, God and Satan still talk. It's not like God kicked Satan out of heaven and he's like, I can't believe you would do this to me. Our world that we live in was created for the sole purpose of us choosing life or death. We have free will for that very reason. You can choose heaven by choosing Christ and choosing to follow God, or you could choose hell by choosing yourself. A lot of people that are Satanists don't believe in Satan at all, according to them. They just believe themselves to be God. So whether you believe in yourself to be God or Satan, that's what Lucifer tempted them with, as the serpent was eating from the fruit because he wanted them to be like God. And they said, yeah, let's do it, right? Fast forward, through Jesus' sacrifice in the Gospels, that's what gives us redemption, because they doomed humans. They doomed mankind. There's something that's called generational curses. So even the Bible says it, that it'll go down through your generations, through your bloodline. That's why, you'll get anger from your mom or from your dad or something like that. Or people will have high blood pressure and it keeps passing through from generation to generation. Well, there's generational curses that we have on us. And we're all descendants of Adam and Eve. Now, once you get to Revelation, Jesus died, he went away. John, who wrote the book of John, the Gospel of John, and John, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John, he's in a prison cell in Patmos, and an angel appears to him. He falls on the ground like he's dead. He's like tripping because it's this crazy looking creature. And it basically says, this is what you need to write down. So write these 7 letters to these churches. These churches are guilty of tolerating the Jezebel spirit. They're guilty of being lukewarm. They're guilty of all these different reasons, and I'll spit them out of my mouth, basically they say. So you're not going to get into heaven. You're going to be spit out and left on the earth when it's time for final judgment. But at the end of Revelation, it talks about the new heaven, the new earth. It says that we're going to meet Christ in the air. And the way that we meet Christ in the air is by pursuing righteousness and by accepting Christ's sacrifice. We're saved through grace, and we're not saved through our works. Like, I can't go out and feed the homeless every day, and that's going to get me into heaven. And I can't stop cursing. That's another thing. Curse words, literally putting curses on ourselves and putting curses on other people, because words hold power. The Bible says the power of life and death lives within our tongue. But we can't do that and still enter into the kingdom of heaven. Now, that being said, I believe that Christ is the way, the truth, and the life, as he says. But I believe that we all need to unite against what's going on right now. It doesn't matter if you're Muslim, doesn't matter if you're Jewish, doesn't matter if you're Christian, doesn't matter. If you believe in a God and you believe in light and darkness, we need to unite. And we can have that conversation about, if I believe Jesus is the way, you believe Muhammad, let's have that talk. But what we need to do is unite against this blatant Satanism going on and the evil in the world that's coming after our children. It's coming after our children, and it's coming after us, and we need to stand up right now against it, because not picking a side is picking a side. And if you're not picking a side, then you're with the devil. I don't know if you want to talk more about curse words, because I know you like talking about curses, because we used to curse our whole lives. I was swearing like a sailor.
Yeah, and I do feel like that people talk about manifestation, and people talk about affirmations, and people talk about how powerful words are and just speaking it into the universe, and you hear all that. That is 1000% true, because you say a word and it brings life. What God spoke, he created the world with just his words. So when people speak and you're putting a curse word on you, that's one portal that you can open. Then you take things and you do an action, that's another portal. It's just, I don't know, it's so much.
Yeah.
It's so much, and I feel tired after talking about that, but.
Yeah, no, I mean, 100%. And, we can wrap it up. We're about 44 minutes into it. But yeah, we just wanted to make the first podcast. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. We'll definitely make another one and put it up. We got a new YouTube channel. I'll put the link to that video that opened our eyes. We're active in the Discord as well. Also live streaming. We're going to be live streaming more and be making more of these and talking about specific comments. So definitely share this with people if you'd like to. We need to unite. and just fight against this evil that's in this world right now, because we're all being censored on all these platforms and being told like, yeah, right, you're crazy. And then at the same time, they're pushing all these satanic things that I'm reading the Bible and I'm like, what the heck? Like, okay, hold on. I know I said we're going to end, but give me just a minute. Because in the Bible, it talks about the mark of the beast. And imagine John. So the prophetic books, they're given prophecy, right? A lot of times through dreams. She has prophetic dreams. People a lot of times now still have them. Some people think, oh, all this stuff with prophecy and stuff like that, that's just back in the biblical days. That's not still going on. Wrong, because it's all still going on today. There's people that have different spiritual gifts. God gives us all gifts. I make music, for example. I was making music for Satan, because Satan and through his influence tries to take your gifts that God's given you and use it for the power of pushing Satan. Because Satan and God are in a battle for souls. It's a volume game of number of souls. I've done sales for my whole life, so I think in terms of high volume. Satan's trying to take as many souls to hell as he can, and God is trying to wake up as many souls to heaven as he can. And so what our job is as vessels is to bring as many people the gospel as possible and bring as many people to God. We all have gifts. Through John's gift of prophecy, he's told that we're going to have, the best word he could describe it as is a mark. He says we're going to have a mark in our hand or on our forehead, like Face ID, that we're going to have to scan to be able to buy or sell. And so now when I'm seeing things from the United Nations and from the World Economic Forum, and I'm seeing, wait a minute, they're selling it as universal basic income. All you have to do is get this chip in your hand and you scan it, and that's how you buy all your groceries. And I'm like, what the heck? I read that in the Bible, like written thousands of years ago, that says that they're going to put a mark in your hand and you can't buy and sell unless you have it. Is that just a coincidence? And then as I'm reading it, I'm finding out that all these things are coming true and coming to pass. And I'm like, you mean if that's true, then that means that all this other stuff that it says must be true also. That being said, if you have not found Christ, if you have not found God, you're going to have a rough time to come.
But the people who say it's just a show, it's just a movie, guess what? They've been putting that stuff in your movies and your shows for a long time, and
Grooming you for it.
And now they're even putting it in so much. They're explaining exactly what it is and making the Illuminati shows and making fun of it, so you're entertained by it and you're staying asleep to it, and you're just going, oh, it's just a show.
Kind of like Aliens. Remember how Aliens was a laughing matter? If I were to tell you, let's say 5 years ago, before COVID and everything, if I were to tell you, oh, I saw a UFO, people would laugh at you, because on our TV and on our movies, they were always like, ha ha, you saw a UFO.
I'm pretty sure people committed suicide because they were so denied that this thing was so fake, and they got made fun of, just like we made fun of my mom for thinking that any vaccine could harm her child. We just stay asleep to these things and we follow what we're told, but where are we getting our information from? And then now you can look at it and you can find it all the way back to where they just connect, and it's the people who are making money off of it, and the people who are running the show, and the evil people who obviously want you to not believe in them.
Exactly. Yep. And that's why it's funny, because now you mention it and people will be like, oh yeah, the government just said aliens are real. Now I believe you. Well, what's different? The only thing that's different is the news told us, quote unquote news told us, oh yeah, aliens are real. So now all of a sudden we believe it. Well, let me ask you this. If the government has lied to you about that, do you really think they're telling you the truth about everything else? Don't you think there's a possibility that they might be lying to you about something else?
And the fact that words are so similar to each other that you could look up the word demon and look up the word alien, and they will both mean the same thing. So it's just, we got to pay attention to everything that connects. Every single little thing, every detail. Angels could even mean alien. It's just that's a blanketed term for all these things. And you may think of that word and just think, oh, it means this. But if you really look into it, what I've learned is that the words mean all the same thing as a bunch of other words that you wouldn't even think of. Like the word set. I think the word set, S-E-T, has the most meanings and definitions to it than any other word in the English language, at least. I think I looked that up one time, and it was just like, and then that happens to be, the Egyptian.
And then the whole Balenciaga thing, and it translates in Latin to Baal is king. And it's,
so
I threw away my shoes. I'm like, no, it doesn't. Yeah. But there's so many words, all these words that we're saying all day long.
Dior had the nickname Golden Bull, and Golden God or Golden Bull, and I looked into that, and then I found that the guy who gave the nickname to that, I can't even find it on Google anymore. That was something that I had to write down. Jean something. He then gets related to Pablo Picasso and Beauty and the Beast and all these plays, Les Miserables, I think, or however you say it in that language. But he's related to all these different things, and it's like the guy who just happened to give that nickname to Dior the golden. I was just, it's all pagan worship. And if we really look at it and see it for what it is, it makes the most sense. It's just there right in front of your face. You were just too asleep and too ignorant to accept that because you were told otherwise in your TV show, in your movie, in your schooling, in your college.
And when we say you, we're talking about us too.
Yes.
Because we were blind to all this stuff.
We have demons tattooed on us. We have
Yep.
piercings. We let so many demons into our temple. We didn't treat our temple like a house because that you just want to rebel against your parents and go, I'm going to go dye my hair because, oh, well, it's my temple. It's my body. Like, you know, I'm not going to.
My body, my choice.
We got tattoos. We got piercings. We did a lot of things to it. We drank a lot of spirits. We did a lot of drugs, which, you know, and probably that, whatever that drug's name is, it probably translates to what you're doing. And it's just nobody looks into it because you're just so brainwashed into thinking, I'm just going to go along with this. This whole Western medicine world, it's just so accepted and so desensitized, or everyone's normalized and desensitized to what it actually is, and it's just drugs. It's just drugs at the end of the day. You may want to go, oh, but they're helping you and they're doing this and they're saving your life. Well, look at the root cause of what's making you sick and what's happening to you, and then I'm pretty sure you can find the answer is in something that you're
Putting into your body.
Putting into your body from the grocery store that is also ran by the pharmaceutical company. They're just different names.
Or they own a bunch of stock. They'll be shareholders like
Pfizer
BlackRock.
owns chapstick.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm putting on my mouth every day.
Yep. And what was I going to say? I was just going to say something about that.
I'm tired.
You're tired, babe? Yeah, we can go ahead and end it. And I know we've been kind of jumping around talking about a lot of different stuff, but you know, coming up we're going to be focusing on specific topics and reacting to popular videos and YouTube videos and things like that. You know, but definitely we appreciate you guys hanging out. We appreciate you watching this whole thing. We're almost an hour in.
I'm glad I didn't laugh the entire time.
I know she was so worried about doing this because, you know, it's kind of weird getting in front of a camera and doing it, but we appreciate all of you. Welcome to the channel. Go ahead, like it, subscribe it, share it with somebody. Join the new Discord. We'd love to hang with you, talk with you in there. We do daily devotionals, pray for each other, all that stuff, because we definitely need to unite for what's to come. Have a great night. We'll talk to you later. Bye.